Yo, welcome to the Hammer Nayls Show, Tuesday night edition. Hey, we had a big game last night, huh, Jessie? I'm Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, really quick, and that's my buddy Jay Nails, Jessie Naylor from Last Second Sports. Jessie, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. Yeah, this is one of the rare times where we get to go on literally a day after a game. So it's interesting because the way the show has flowed for so long, it was previewing games. Now it's talking about games, but it's the day after instead of 2 days after. So it's still fresh in our mind. All the thoughts, raw emotions, whatever, are all right there. So I like this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, we're only about 20 minutes into the game last night at this point. It was still, I think the Rams were probably still on their first opening possession of that game. They held on to it for so long. But kind of, looking at it, what were your, just real quick, overall thoughts from the game last night?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the defense is the given at this point. I mean, it's incredible. That was supposed to be their first real test. They gave up 9 points. You look at the stats in that game and everything favored the Rams. Like, they should have won that game. You look at the time of possession, the yards, the first downs, like just everything. It looked like it could have gone their way. Now, obviously, the turnovers is one thing, but the defense is dominant. Like, that's what we're starting to expect from them, and they're only going to get better with some of these guys coming back. But I do, and my thought last night was the same that it is today, which is Jimmy Garoppolo, right? We've seen Jimmy at his best, and we've seen him at his worst, and we've literally seen it almost in back-to-back weeks. We saw it at times. There was ebbs and flows in the Seattle game. We've gotten the full experience in 2.5 games with Jimmy Garoppolo. But Jimmy Garoppolo, he said something pretty key to me when he re-signed with the 49ers. He talked about how you need to know who you are in this league. Well, Jimmy, if you know who you are, you would know that you are more of a game manager. And that is not an insult, right? A lot of people look at that as this horrible thing. That is not what that is meant to be. My biggest gripe with Jimmy Garoppolo for all of these years is he does not protect the ball. And people are like, well, he's a game manager. I'm like, no, actually he's not. He plays more like a gunslinger because he doesn't protect the football. His skill set is that of a game manager, but he does not protect the football the way traditional game managers do. Last night, he did just that. Yes, there were some throws that were there that he probably should have seen or made, but I will take the checkdowns, maybe even throwing short of the sticks on third down from time to time if it means we're not getting turnovers, because I think protecting the football, especially with a defense like this, is the most important thing. And if you make any team go 50, 60, 70, 80 yards on this defense, more often than not, they're not going to be able to do it. And that's what we saw last night. So I would say my biggest takeaway is Jimmy did exactly last night what he needs to do for this team to be at its best.
Yeah, well, my biggest takeaway wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo, but since you were talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, I'll just stick on the Jimmy Garoppolo track because I agree with you. I thought it was Garoppolo was okay. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo last night was Jimmy Garoppolo. 16 completions, 9 of those were at or behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of screens. His biggest throw of the day was the touchdown to Deebo Samuel for 57 yards on a 5-yard pass that was almost intercepted. And, you look at his numbers again, 16 completions, 9, like I just said. When he threw the ball down the field, 10 yards or more, Jimmy Garoppolo was 2 of 6. Jimmy Garoppolo last night was the same Jimmy Garoppolo we've seen since he started playing for the 49ers. The difference was he didn't turn the ball over. That's the difference. And I like the game plan that Kyle Shanahan put together in that he asked Garoppolo to make some maybe a little bit more tougher throws, I guess, in that first possession with the third down conversions. Those weren't really hard throws, but they weren't weren't easy either. Like, they weren't just, gimme throws like the screens are. Garoppolo, I thought he did a good job there. But then as the game wore on, you saw the screens kind of start to work. And at some point, this team needs Jimmy Garoppolo to not screw up a deep throw. I just, at some point, it's going to happen. And when it happens, everybody on 49ers Twitter is going to tell you, see, I told you he could do it. I told you he could do it. Because Jimmy Garoppolo has missed 3 games in a row, he's had guys running open down the left sideline, and he's missed them. Whether it's Deebo Samuel, who I know caught the ball, but he had to twist to catch it. Last night it was Charlie Werner. Week 1, it was twice. So the first one was to Brandon Ayuk, and then the second one to Danny Gray. Both awful throws. So it's Jimmy Garoppolo being Jimmy Garoppolo, but like you said, Jesse, this is what they need to win. And his performance last night was exactly what the 49ers need. Be a facilitator, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, and don't turn it over. Because if you don't turn it over, this defense is so good, you're going to win if you just can put 20 points on the board, 17 to 20 points. That's how good this defense is.
Yeah, and we're going to figure it out, right? Because the thought process is that at some point you're going to need the quarterback to go win you a game. And maybe that's in the playoffs, right? But I don't know if that's necessarily true right now because this defense is so dominant. However, we're going to see for sure because in just a couple weeks' time, they get to play the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City Chiefs, that offense is extremely explosive. We saw it go crazy right here in Tampa. And I want to see how this defense matches up with an offense that is that explosive because there are a few of them in the league. Kansas City's one, Buffalo's another, Tampa can be sometimes. So that's really when we're going to see if Jimmy does in fact have to go win them a game potentially, because if they can hold down the Kansas City Chiefs, I start to look at it and say, hey, maybe this version of Jimmy, if he can just do this, really is enough to win a Super Bowl. And I'm skeptical of that, but we're starting to see some things play out to where that just might be the case. And I think we're going to learn a lot, not only in the Kansas City game, but then a week after the bye when they play the Chargers. So between those two games, we're going to learn a lot about what this defense really can hold down and what they cannot.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going to find out a lot about them. They get this road trip coming up, and I know a lot of folks had them at 4-2 after the first 6 weeks of the season. So I think they can get to 4-2, and it's just going to be a little bit different way than we expected them to. If they do, they're going to be in first place in their division. Going into what the meat of their schedule is, they're going to have – they've got Kansas City at home after that road trip. Then they're back down to L.A. to face the Rams again. And then you come home and you face Justin Herbert, and you've got Tom Brady coming into town, and it's a meat grinder of a schedule in terms of the offenses that they have to play. And if in that middle period, it's going to be really tough for them. Really quick, I want to throw this one up. It's a good question from Emiliano. He says, what up, fellas? I appreciate the win, but do you two gents have any solutions to how to get this offense going after the script ends, or at least in the second half? Afraid this will bite them eventually. I'll take this one first, Jesse.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan needs his quarterback to make a throw. That's what's holding this offense back, is the quarterback is not making throws that are open when he is scheming them up in the second half or in the fourth quarter or whenever it is. They've got guys that are open and he's just not hitting them.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you've heard this forever, right? And my argument against it has always been, well, you're the one that decided to keep Jimmy around. But right now, Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup quarterback, right? And I think this is probably the one time since the 2019 season where people, if they say, hey, Kyle is scheming things open and his quarterback is just not able to make the plays, where I'm more willing to give him a pass because he did lose his starting quarterback. He chose not to start Jimmy. Jimmy's the backup, one of the better backups in the league, but you can't expect your backup quarterback to do the things that you would expect your starter to do. And so you're right. At some point, if they want to put together a full game, the problem is that it hasn't happened in a long time, Jack. It hasn't. And Sunil brought this up to me a few weeks ago on my show. I forget what the question was, but he did such a good job talking about it. But really, if you look at the 49ers, when was the last time they put together a complete 4 quarters on offense? It's been a long, long time. And if you want to look at the last time it happened, whenever that was, has it ever happened 2 weeks in a row? It's one of the things that with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, you're probably just not going to be able to put it together. And truth be told, even Trey Lance, when he was at quarterback, they weren't putting together complete games. It was halves. So there's certainly something there. There's something to that for sure.
Yeah. There's something there. But I think it's more. I said the same thing that I just said about Garoppolo. I think right now where the 49ers are, Trey Lance, if it's Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo this year and their 2 losses, I think the losses kind of fall back on the quarterback position, missing throws and those types of things. I think it's on both of them. We don't know where Trey Lance would be right now if he wasn't, hurt. That was the expectation was from a number of folks was that he was going to struggle early and do better as the season went along. And who knows how it would have played out. It's not happened in that direction. We know that he's got Jimmy Garoppolo, and unless the quarterback makes throws that keep them moving down the field, and every once in a while he's got to make a play, they're going to continue to put up 17 points a game in that ballpark. But even if they do that, I think if they can get to 20, this is a defense that's going to win them a lot of games.
Yeah, and I think 20 is probably the sweet spot for a lot of these games. I mean, they fell just short of that last year in the NFC Championship. Yeah, you're right. It's not going to take a lot. It's really not. And chances are almost every game, either the special teams or the defense is going to give you at least 1 or 2 drives a game where they force the opponent to give you the ball in a really opportune spot. The offense just has to figure out how to capitalize on that.
Yeah. And then KW2421 says our defense is good enough to stop Kansas City, we think. I'm throwing that in there. And as long as Jimmy doesn't lose the game, we can beat them. We're going to find out how good this defense is. I know that we've all kind of been saying that. We're going to find out. I think it starts really with Kansas City. I was very underimpressed, underwhelmed by what the Rams put on the field. They've got Cooper Kupp and they've got Tyler Higbee, and then they've got a bunch of Jags running around the field because they don't have an offensive line that can run the ball. And Allen Robinson, I don't understand why so many people love Allen Robinson, a guy that's always been a guy who's needed 150, 140 targets to put up any kind of numbers. And he's not going to get those on the Rams. And it's 2 guys, and if you shut them down, you shut the Rams down. And the 49ers did a really good job of keeping everything in front of them and then clamping down in the red zone last night. Just a really good performance.
Yeah, and I want to be clear because I think we both do think the defense is really good. But at some point, this is an offensive-driven league. The rules are tailored for offense. So unless you're an all-time elite defense in this era, and even then, there's going to be games where you're probably going to get scored on. I think we agree that the defenses that Harbaugh and them had were really, really good. But they had playoffs drives where it was like they gave up 25, 30, mid 30s in points, and the offense had to come through. Eventually, it's going to happen. All defenses have that game. You hope it's not in the playoffs, but again, the rules are tailored towards it. So to expect this defense to hold every great quarterback to 20 points or less, I just think that's a lot to expect. At some point, the offense, I imagine, has to go out and win you a game. And can they do it? And when does that time come? Is it in the playoffs? That's, there's a lot of questions that we just aren't going to know the answer to until it happens.
Yeah. At some point, they've got to get this running game going. I know, you had the big explosive play, but they're not getting – their run game has been kind of hit and miss. We kind of saw them deal with that last year. Really like Jeff Wilson Jr. I want to see some more of Jordan Mason. I know that was one of the questions I was asked over in the comment section. I just think they need to get that run game going, and that's by the time they get back to Santa Clara to take on Kansas City. I think they need to get that run game going because if it becomes a shootout, we already know the direction that's going to lead. So I think you got to see that run game start to pick up and start to take a little bit of a hold. I know they're really good the first couple of weeks, but without Trey Lance there, it really changes things around.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Like once Trey Lance went down, the run game has taken a major step back. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see how that plays out. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell, it sounds like at some point will be back, but can you rely on him to stay healthy at this point? Probably not. Trent Williams is trending in the right direction. Hopefully he's back by the Kansas City game. There's some guys coming back that I think can help it, but I don't know how much you can rely on their health long-term either. So.
Right, right. No, that's kind of transition just a little bit. Let's look at this game and let's give out some game balls. We got a couple game balls we got to give out. I know you're a big fan of Andy Reid. We'll save that for another discussion, maybe an after dark discussion, because I don't know, Jesse, that was a good one.
That was a good response. I enjoyed that one.
But as far as the 49ers, let's start with the offensive side of the ball, since we were kind of talking offense. Who gets the game ball from the 49ers offense for you?
I think there's an obvious one, but I'll try to stay away from that if I can. You know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give it to Jim. I'm gonna give it to Jimmy. I am. There's an obvious one, right? And again, I think we know who that is, but I have to give Jimmy some credit for the way that he played last night. Again, if I'm comparing it to other quarterbacks, probably not the best performance. It's not like he showed out or did anything spectacular, but it's just not turning the ball over. Like, for God's sakes, can we just not turn the ball? If he had 20 touchdown passes a season and only 5 interceptions or 7 interceptions, I would take that. I would take that. The problem is he gets 20 and then he gets 18 turnovers. It's like, that's what we can't take. So just by not turning the ball over and being a facilitator, and really, to me, Jack, when I talked about last week's game, I talked about what the 49ers needed to do, in my opinion, was spread teams out horizontally through the pass game, because Jimmy cannot do it vertically. But around the line of scrimmage, 10 yards and in, he can do it horizontally. And you look at where those completions came from, it was a lot of exactly that. Around the line of scrimmage, stretching them out horizontally, which opens up the middle. So because of that, because he executed the game plan that I put forth that I thought they should do, and he executed it, and he didn't have a turnover, I'm going to give it to Jimmy.
Well, they ran what they did is they executed my game plan, Jesse, because my game plan for them was don't turn the ball over and you're going to win. That's what I said.
Fair. No, that's
totally it's all fair. About turnovers. You don't turn the ball over, you're going to win, because that's been their MO, right? They're 13-3, I think it is, in games since the start of 2021 that they've either won the turnover margin or been tied. When they've been almost unbeatable when they've taken the ball away more than the opponent. Last night, really quick, speaking of turnovers, the Rams were 2-0 in games when they turned the ball over more than their opponents. Last night was the first time they actually lost. Interesting little side note. But you left me the easy
Stafford,
one.
by the way, he doesn't talk about not protecting the ball. Geez, he could have had 4 picks last night. Easy.
Well, that's the thing with him. You know that he's going to give you a chance to pick off a pass. And they should have had one in the end zone. It hit Gibson right between the numbers. That should have been a pick. And then you obviously the Talanoa Hufanga one was right there. That was a great play by Hufanga to read that and just pick it off and go the other direction. But for me, when I look at the 49ers offense, I like the Garoppolo one from you for the reasons that you gave. It's too easy though, and I'm going to take. Sometimes it's easier. It's better to work smarter, not harder. So instead of having to,
Debo, come on.
yeah. And instead of having to go through the work to try to explain why I'm going to give it, you're just trying to win some fans on here. I know what you're doing. I'm kidding. But
no, Jason, definitely not.
You are a Jimmy Stan if there ever was one. We know that. But the game ball and the offense goes to Debo Samuel. He's the dude. The screen game and the plays that he made. He made Jimmy. He had 115 yards receiving last night, and I think of those 115 yards, I know 52 of them on the touchdown were after the catch. And then his other big play was a 29-yarder, which he caught behind the line of scrimmage. So his yak was right around 80 out of that 115 last night. So Debo Samuel gets the game ball for the offense. And an honorable mention goes to Garoppolo. I'd also say an honorable mention to George Kittle, because part of the reason that Jimmy Garoppolo got hit only once last night was because George Kittle was played tackle, left and right tackle throughout most of the game.
Well, and I think I almost gave it to Ayuk, right? Like there's not a lot of stats out there, but you look at the way he was blocking downfield on a few of these bigger plays, it was impressive. And also the way that he was able to go back and forth with Jalen Ramsey. I mean, I don't know. I wish Jimmy was a little bit better because I think Ayuk is really freaking good, man. He's not going to get the passes thrown his way. It's just not going to be a thing with Jimmy Garoppolo on a regular basis, and it's unfortunate because Ayuk is. I think he can be really, really good in this league. I really do. And I see, hey, platform 246. Listen, if you listen to what I said I wanted to be different. Debo is the obvious game ball. Come on, man, chill out over there.
Yeah, and then no, you said that. I was teasing you too. Yeah, KW 24-21. How about Jeff Wilson? No, Jeff Wilson had a good game, and that run was a fantastic touchdown run. If I'm going to give anybody the game ball though, other than Deebo Samuel, I get the Jimmy Garoppolo one. I give it to Kyle Shanahan because I really like the way that they set that up. Because you've seen the 49ers run that look where it's the guy motioning across and they'd run the toss and they run it, over and over again. And we saw them do that on the first time they got into that in this game. And on that possession, they ran it. We saw Wilson get tackled for a loss of a couple. They came back with that same look. This time though, it was a toss. Everything looked the same except for it was a zone, inside zone run, and really nice block by Spencer Burford gets the linebacker who's over pursuing, and Wilson's out the gate for a touchdown. So, I like that part of it for Shanahan.
Yeah, and Wilson, I mean, he's had a couple of these. Like you said, it's just not the consistency, right? The consistency is not there, but he's explosive still. Like, I think we've answered that question because he's done it in a few games now. He can get that 1 or 2 a game, but it's just the other 10, right? It's getting 1 yard or 2 yards. The average looks good because he gets that 1 or 2 big ones, and then the rest of the game, it's like, 0 yards, 1 yard, 2, So that's where Wilson has to improve, and that's where I think throwing in somebody like Mason or Mac or whoever might just be enough of a change of pace. The Debo thing's not working anymore. Running the ball for Debo is not so hot anymore.
Right, and last night, at least the first time they gave it to Debo, both times that he could have got more yards than he did. The first one, I think he misread it. The second one, he kind of did it as well. Again, Deebo Samuel is an electric player with the ball in his hand, so you put the ball in him there, give him the ball to see what he can do. But he's not a running back in that he doesn't see it all that well. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't see it the way that Jeff Wilson Jr. does.
Right.
He's just a better athlete than everybody else, which is why he's able to make it work. And teams are doing a better job against him now. So,
yep.
There's the game balls on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I think I need to get a couple of sacks of those. That sounded bad too. I think you need to get like 24 balls so that we can hand them out to everybody on the defense because that defense was dynamite last night.
So damn good, man. It was incredible. And there's a minimum 3 players that you can give it to. I'm gonna go with Hufanga, man, just because man, this guy I almost let one slip there. This guy is absolutely incredible, Jack. He's special. He's playing like a special player, and it's crazy because not only did people question if he could be better than Tart, but he's up there with the best safeties in the league right now. And it's not like he just had 1 or 2 performances to put him there. It's every single game, down in, down out. With, early on, I thought Armstead was getting him free quite a bit. And I think maybe in Denver, it kind of showed itself a little bit. But dude, even whether Armstead played or not, like, this kid is just making plays. His blitz timing is special. The way he jumps routes is special. His instincts are just special. And maybe we were wrong about how bad of an athlete he is. Somebody brought it up. I was on Croc Show this morning. Somebody brought up that he eclipsed 21 miles an hour last night on his interception. Maybe he's a little bit quicker than what we anticipated. And you add that in with the instincts and the hard work and the want to be great. Man, I can't say enough good things about this kid. Talanoa Hufanga he's him.
Yeah, no, Hufanga's been Hufanga's been, he was a playmaker at SC, and he was able to play enough last year. He got a pretty good feel for what this defense asks of him, and he's come out and he's just balled out. I put it out there on Twitter earlier today. Here's the thing with the 49ers safety position: Talanoa Hufanga and Tayshaun Gibson have 3 interceptions. For 4 weeks into the season, they have 3 interceptions. That's the most interceptions from the 49ers safeties in a season. It ties with what they did in 2017. Since 2017, when Kyle Shanahan took over, 49ers safeties have recorded 3 interceptions in the season, one time before this season, and that was in 2017. So, you got guys running around, and they're getting Jimmy Ward back too.
I know.
Right? Jimmy Ward's going to be back on this team. So, that's, I'm giving my game ball to Nick Bosa, though. Again, you talk about, you say Talanoa is him. That's Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is proving everybody who doubted him in terms of coming out of Ohio State, because there were some, because of the injury history. He's healthy, and when he is dominating teams right now. 6 sacks already, on pace for 25.5. Probably not going to get to 25.5, but he's on pace for having a great season. And I think, Bosa is just a stud. I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he did last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just throw out some honorable mentions. I think Ebicom deserves some love against his former team. He played phenomenal. I think Lenoir played really good too. I know that Kupp did what he normally does. That wasn't all on Lenoir, but it's not going to get any harder for Lenoir in this league. And he still flashed. I mean, there was multiple times where he was undercutting routes so that they couldn't go Kupp's way, forcing Stafford to look in other directions. His blitz timing is really good. I mean, this defense just doesn't. There's just not a weakness on it, man. There's no weaknesses, and they're only getting better because they're only getting healthier. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And as Emiliano says right here, Menahu balled out. He got that sack. Dre Greenlaw balled out 15 tackles last night. He's a leading tackler for the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Fred Warner, there was one play, you've probably seen it on Twitter floating around. Maybe you saw it during the game, but Warner lines up like he's going to blitz, ends up dropping back, and he's running down the field 20 yards with Cooper Kupp underneath him, covering him. It's wild. And the 49ers did an excellent job. I know Kupp got his numbers. I know, yeah. but at the same time, there's only 2 guys on the Rams that do anything. And so obviously if the quarterback throws the ball 48 times, they're going to put up some numbers, but they held them under 10 yards a catch. So it was a really good game for the 49ers all around. So it's really hard to nail one, but this wasn't on our list, but I'm going to ask you. I look at this team, and I put this on Twitter last night. When I watch this team play, I get excited watching the defense play, and I don't think I've been that excited since 1994. You look at this team, and I know that there's been some really good 49ers defenses since 94 when they won the Super Bowl, but this one and the way they play and how much fun they are, they're good.
Well, and I think the biggest thing too, and this is something that Hufanga and Greenlaw really bring to this team, and I thought that it was an area of opportunity for this defense. It was the one thing they were missing because they were really, really good, but I felt like they were missing those thumpers, the guys that are going to scare opposing offenses, not wanting to go over the middle or get anywhere near these guys because they know they're going to get hit. And I think Hufanga and Greenlaw bring that. I know before the season started, I made a bold claim. I said, this is the best, on paper, the best 49ers secondary that has existed since 1994. And a lot of people really did not like that take. I think I was right. I think I was right on that one because this secondary is so good. But then you add in the linebackers and the pass rush. It's like, where do you go? Where's your reprieve? How do you get away from anybody? Like, how do you attack this defense? You can't run the ball. You can't pass the ball against the corners. You can't pass the ball against the nickel corner or the safeties or even the linebackers to your tight end. How do you exploit this defense? Where is your reprieve? There is none. They're just sucking the oxygen out of the air and squeezing you like a boa constrictor until you just give in, turn the ball over multiple times, and then they're walking off the field with a victory. It's unbelievable what this defense is doing right now.
I agree with you. I put that on Twitter last night. Like I said, that this is the most fun since 1994. And I had people telling me that I must have been sleeping through the 2011, 2012 year. years to 2013 as well. But this team, I think, is if when it's all said and done, I know that Patrick Wilson is going to be in the Hall of Fame. He was awesome, but Fred Warner's an All-Pro, and you look at the defensive line. Nick Bosa at his pace, he's better. Like this defense as a whole is better than what you saw in 11, 12, and 13. That the 94 team, it was a pretty good defense, but I think it was a lot more fun to watch just because you had Deion Sanders and his swagger that he had out there, and you saw them kind of start to gel as the season went along. But I'm looking at this thing right now, and it's hard to say where are the 49ers any worse with this team than any of those great 49ers defenses, because like you said, that defensive front, that thing is nails. Linebacker level is really good, and at safety and outside corner, this team is stacked on defense. It's just, I know that people really liked what D'Amico Ryans is doing, but imagine if Kyle Shanahan hadn't screwed up the quarterback position and had a quarterback like he has, right? Meaning Fred Warner. If he had an All-Pro level quarterback, how good that offense would be,
Yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, those defenses that people are bringing up, they were a lot of fun to watch. There was a lot of swag, probably harder hitters. I'll give them that. But just skill for skill, those corners don't match up with these corners. Those safeties don't match up with these. Those safeties could hit, but they're not covering people the way that these safeties are. This secondary is on a different level than those teams were, and I think that's where the difference is. Obviously the linebackers then were better, which is tough to say because these ones are good too, but those ones were better. I think the defensive lines are probably at a wash, but the secondaries are not even close in my opinion. From a skill standpoint and a ball hawk standpoint, I think the secondary is light years ahead of that secondary.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a big difference in the secondary, and it's funny you say the hitting was a lot. Yeah, but there were hits that were made in 1994 that would get guys thrown out of the league now. I mean, I saw a personal foul the other day, and the guy, all he did was go across and hit the receiver and knock the ball out of his hands almost, and they called foul on him. So it's a different game now. So you don't get that.
Well, and I'm comparing to the 2011, 12, 13, not 94. That 94 secondary was.
Well, the 94 secondary was Deion Sanders. Changed that whole secondary though, right?
Yeah, for sure he did. Yeah.
Because it was all the same guys from the year before that weren't very good, but you put Deion Sanders out there and all of a sudden everybody around it starts to change. Eric Davis and blanking on his name.
Merton Hanks and
Tim McDonald and Merton Hanks, right? Mm-hmm. And Toy Cook, somebody mentioned Toy Cook's name over there earlier on. So yeah, no, it was different. Even the 11 and 12 and 13. This is a better unit, I think. But it's a fun conversation that we're going to be able to have. Let's see how this thing plays out when the season's done. That'll be a fun conversation to come back and touch base on and see where they are. We'll really be able to get it. The one thing that I will point out from a stat perspective, 3.8 yards per play. I think that was the number. Yeah, 3.8 yards per play that they've given up. Those really good teams that we just talked about, 94, 11, 12, and 13, those teams, the best of any of those was 4.7. So this defense right now is a yard per play less. That's a big number when you start to look at that average. That's a really big difference. So should give you an idea of how good this team is. Now, the other question I want to ask you, the 49ers have some issues along the offensive line and the defensive line. Which one do you think is the bigger concern? The offensive line issues or the interior of the defensive line?
See, it's interesting because I feel at first glance the offensive line is the obvious answer, but the story of this team is the defense, and it's going to continue to be that. I just talked about how there is no chinks in the armor of this defense, but if you remove Armstead and Kinlaw for a long period of time, can you start to run on this team? That is one thing I do question, right? If you get a good interior offensive line that knows how to move people, can this team be ran on? And that is something that I think is possible. If we want this defense to continue to be the story of this team, I think you need one of them, preferably Armstead. If you have to choose one, you would like to have them both, but you need one of them to be healthy because the depth only goes so far. I think the pass rushing, regardless of who's there, they can manufacture pass rush. There's too many talented guys. You can kick Hyder inside on pass rush and Minahu, Ebicom, Bosa. You can stunt. They can do that. But it's long term. Can they stop the run? And I will say that this team, maybe not this year, but just as early as last year, for the first half of the season, was low-key getting gashed in the run game. And that was, it took Armstead moving to the inside for them to figure that out. Well, if you remove him from the inside of that defense and you start to take pieces away continually, at what point does it start to bend? So, like I said, I think the obvious answer early on is the offensive line, but I don't, if this offensive line's perfect, I still don't trust them to put up 20 points repeatedly. Best case scenario. But if this defensive line can't get its horses there up the middle, then all of a sudden there are some things with this defense that I'm like, oh geez, maybe that's a weakness all of a sudden. So I'm actually gonna say the defensive line.
Okay. And I see where you're going. I don't agree with it. I think the offensive line is the bigger question, specifically now with Colt McKivitz out. Mm-hmm. The only way that this works out, though, for the 49ers, where you can feel a little bit better about it, is that they have Daniel Brunskill coming back. And so I think what we're going to see, and I think the way we'll see this play out is I think you're going to see Jalen Moore start. But the leash is going to be short. And if he struggles, then that's where Daniel Brunskill steps in. They also talked about Blake Hance, that he's played tackle as well. That's the guy they picked up from Cleveland. He's an option. I think they see him more as their backup center, whereas I think they look at Daniel Brunskill as their guy that can play everywhere. So that one's the bigger concern to me. I feel like they just have so much depth and so many bodies that they can put at that interior defensive line spot that I don't think it's quite the issue that we think it is. They went up against a really good running team in Denver in week 3 and did a pretty good job against them. I think they just got worn down because the offense couldn't stay on the field. And so as the game wore on, you saw them start to give up yards, but they never really got gashed in that game. So I think the bigger issue for the 49ers going forward is along the offensive line, in particular, the left tackle spot without Trent Williams, and then now without McKivitz.
I also want to point this out. Like, I think maybe short term, I can definitely get with that. I think that Trent Williams is probably back for the Kansas City game. I think there's a reason they didn't put him on IR. That puts him at exactly 4 weeks. I have a feeling he'll be back for that game. Armstead and Kinlaw both have injuries that literally probably will linger all year. And it's going to come down to pain management and those types of things. And, Armstead sat out a week with this plantar fasciitis, came back, and then left the game because he couldn't manage the pain. So I think chances are, as far as, what's going to linger longer, those two are going to be dealing with whatever it is they're dealing with on and off all season. And they may be in and out of the lineup all year, missing multiple games all season long, And so Trent Williams, when he's back, assuming the rest of the offensive line stays healthy, all of a sudden, I think you're looking at a pretty decent offensive line, and you've got Brunskill to be the backup. Like, he's the first one off the bench and really can play any of those positions. All of a sudden, the offensive line that going into the season that seemed like it could be a major liability is starting to look a little bit more like it could possibly be a strength.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you on the Williams piece. I think that is the goal. I think that's why they haven't put him on IR. I think they want to try to get him back for that Kansas City game. And I'd also agree with you on Armstead and Kinlaw. I think those injuries are going to linger, which is really, it's rough to see a guy like Javon Kinlaw. Yesterday's his birthday. He's not able to play in the game. I did see him getting on the elevator after the game, though, and along with all the other injured guys. But that's a bummer for him. Hopefully he can figure it out, because he definitely helps the team when he's in there. But you got to be healthy. Same thing with Armstead. Get those guys right. Maybe these next couple of weeks, let them rest up and heal up and get ready for Kansas City. Because I think you can get by with what they have outside of those two. Just kind of switching gears a little bit. Let's take a look at the 49ers as a whole. They went out. They got that game. Was the NFC West won last night, in your opinion?
Oh man, actually, can I ask a question that's kind of going back to the last topic real quick while it's fresh in my mind?
Sure.
Would you sign Ndamukong Suh?
I mean, I don't know what the 49ers cap situation looks like. I don't know if they have to go out there and make a splash signing like that. I think they're pretty. I like the way that this team is performing along the defensive front. I don't, if you can bring him in, I on a team friendly deal, go out and bring him in. See if he didn't he win a Super Bowl with Tampa 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Wasn't he? Yeah. So he knows how to win Super Bowls. So I wouldn't be against it. It's not one that I feel like, that's a negative at all. I don't know if it's necessary, but if you've got some money that you're willing to spend, that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at it like, let's say Kinlaw or Armstead ends up going on IR, right? And you just can't trust, if you can't trust both of them for the rest of the season, I do. Yeah. I liked the depth there for sure, but man, that's an instant piece that you can bring in. And I don't think he'd be that expensive. I think he's out there. He's available. Probably not going to command a lot of money, probably incentive laden. Just a name to float out there.
Well, if you're putting Kinlaw or Armstead on IR or something like that because of it, then yeah, Sue would make a lot more sense too that way as well. I mean, it's I don't think it's bad either direction. Real quick before we get back to that question I asked earlier, we have a AIA or LA. I'm not sure which one it is. Super Chat says, if we defer, can we please try scoring if we have the last possession before the half? Tired of leaving points on the board. Too conservative. I don't know. Last night they tried to, right? They opened it up with a screen, picked up a couple yards, should have had a pass, should have had a penalty and got a first down, which I think would have changed the way the game flowed on those last two plays of the half. I don't know. They only had 30 or 40 seconds left. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but if I put the two throws on Twitter, you saw them, Jack, right? You saw the two throws I put out there right before half. I mean, 13, 14 seconds left. Kittle's open and Jimmy sees him. If he hits Kittle and throws him into an open zone, I mean, he may pick up 30 in there in field goal range. So I think Shanahan took the chance. He dialed up a play that was there. It just wasn't made. So, yes, it would obviously getting points before half, but it was there. The opportunity was there last night, and the attempt was there, I should say.
Yeah, I disagree. In watching the film, I disagree with you on the. I know what you're talking about because they kind of ran the same route combination a couple of times. Mm-hmm. The first time
the Jennings third down.
Yeah, the first time they ran it and he dropped it, he definitely had Ayuk open. The second time they ran it, and you had the PI or whatever, it should have been a pass interference, I think, on Deebo Samuel. That second time they ran it, Kittle looks open, but the safety, I think it's Rapp, he's falling back into that spot. So if the ball doesn't get thrown there, I think that he's covered. He's underneath that route, which makes it really hard to get the ball to George Kittle. At least that was the way that I saw it. But I get what you're saying. I just think that the second time was a little bit tougher than the first. First time they definitely had it. The second time, I don't know if it was there or not.
I thought it was there because he was flat-footed and his back's to Kittle. Like if you throw it into an open space, then he's not going to backpedal and beat Kittle there. But let's say it wasn't there, right? Either way, I think to answer this question, whether it was there and Jimmy missed it or whatever, or it just wasn't open, the attempt was there. I'll say that. Like at least Kyle dialed up something that potentially could have broken to get them in field goal range. So I think the attempt was there. The play was drawn up. Whether it was open or it wasn't, we can argue that. But I think the actual, are we trying to score points and being too conservative? I disagree with that in yesterday's game at the very least. Sometimes I do agree with you though.
No. Sometimes that's always the case, right? Sometimes that is the case. I agree with you. I don't think it was the case last night. It just, once that second down play and you got third, and then at third and 4, he takes the deep shot because now you're running out of time. I think you only had like 11 seconds left. So it goes from there. Brian Culp, member of the Toolbox, comes in and real quick, another super chat. How much longer do you think Robbie has? Well, I don't know if he even has 42 anymore because he missed from 42 last night. Made that game a lot closer, Brian. I don't know. I think I don't know how much longer does Robbie Gould even have on his contract. I'd have to look that up, but usually
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, he missed that one. I still trust Robbie Gould though. If we got a game winner, 45 and in, I feel very good about that attempt. I really do.
Good as gold, right? Good as gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. I know we're getting up to it because we got your show coming up as well. But real quick, the 49ers big win last night. Do you think that they won the NFC West last night?
I know it's really, really early. It's impossible to say for sure, Jack, but I mean, if the 49ers went 6-0 in the NFC West, I would not be surprised at this point, right? They're already 2-0. Arizona doesn't look good at all. Now, division games, anything can happen. I expect them to beat Seattle the second time around. On paper, they should beat Arizona in those games, although they'll be getting Hopkins back. We'll see about that. The Rams are just, that's not a good football team right now. Maybe it gets better. Maybe the offensive line gets figured out a little bit. But I talked about it in the offseason. We talked about it in the offseason, Jack, where we felt like the Rams were a little bit worse this year. And that would prove out because of the trenches. The offensive line and defensive line took some pretty big steps back, in our opinion. And I think that really showed last night. And I don't know if that's something they can rectify. I really don't. I wouldn't be shocked if the 49ers go 6-0. And I'm going to say I expect them to go 5-1. I think they are the best team in this division. And I really don't think it's close right now.
Yeah, I think I had them in either 5-1 or 6-0 before the season started. And like Andrew points out, though, the Cardinals are going to be getting DeAndre Hopkins back. So that could be a little bit of a game changer for them as well, for that offense. We'll see how that all plays out. But I think the 49ers, I don't think they won the NFC West, but if they showed that the style of game that they play, and if their offense doesn't turn the ball over, I think they're going to be really hard to be beat. I could see them running off a bunch of games right here. If their defense continues to play at the clip they're playing at, and the offense just holds onto the ball, I could see them winning 10 of their next, whatever, what is it, 15 games? No, 11 games left. I could see them winning. Not 11. What am I talking about? They have 13 games left. Come on, Jack. Gee whiz. I could see them winning 10 of their next 13 or something like that. That's totally doable. And that would, I think, be more than enough to win the NFC West. They didn't win it, but they definitely put themselves in a position. You don't win the division in week 4, but you can lose it. They definitely didn't lose it.
Yeah, if they had lost that game, they would have lost the division, in my opinion. Certainly. You're basically 2.5 games behind the Rams at that point. So yeah, certainly they didn't win it, but I will say this. I think 10 wins is a lock to win this division. And I think even 9-8, if you have the tiebreakers in your favor and you ended up going, let's say 5-1 in the division and finish 9-8, you're probably still winning the division because of the tiebreakers. So yeah, I'd be shocked if they don't win this division. I really would.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. And then one last question for you before I let you go. Does this offense have to be good for Kyle Shanahan to get full credit that he deserves for the wins that this team picks up?
Gosh, I don't think so. I think, again, to me, everybody looks at Kyle Shanahan like he's an offensive coordinator. Like that's the way he's judged, good or bad. And people throw around this genius thing that's very frustrating because he hasn't earned that. He's not an offensive genius. But he doesn't have to be. Just because he's an offensive coach doesn't mean he has to show this genius to be a good head coach, right? Like that's not necessarily the case. Let's not forget that Shanahan also started out as a defensive coach, right? So he knows both sides of the ball. Just be a good head coach. Do the things that a good head coach does. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best offensive coordinator just because people want to throw the genius label at you. I don't think that he has to be, or this offense has to be a driving force in order for him to get credit. If this team continues to win and he's doing things that good head coaches do because he's not just the offensive play caller, then he will get that credit and he would deserve that credit.
Yeah, I think it's hard to because I think you're right. I think we focus on Kyle Shanahan, offensive coordinator, play caller, that side of the ball, not the entire process. And I think as a head coach, I think he's doing a very good job. That's one of the things I said after last season. He showed me a lot as a head coach with his ability to keep that team together from 3-5 to turn that thing around and finish up at 10-7 and get to the playoffs and get to the NFC Championship game and all that kind of stuff. And with everything that's kind of surrounded it, we have it again this year with with the quarterback issue with Garoppolo and Lance and everything. And right now they're 2-2, and it kind of seems like he can keep this thing together. I think Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot more credit and praise from 49er fans than he's getting. Doesn't mean that you don't, point out the negatives, but I think there should be more praise than the other way.
Yeah, I just, to me, it's such an interesting thing with Kyle, because the people that love Kyle and just stand by everything he does is like, I mean, his play calling and his play designs, and he's a wizard, he's a genius. And then the people that don't like Kyle and kill Kyle all the time say the same things, but in the opposite. It's like, well, if he's supposed to be a genius, I mean, his play calling isn't that great to me. And why isn't this offense putting up points? And isn't he supposed to be a genius? No, like, he's supposed to be a head coach. He's not a genius. Like, he hasn't proven to be an offensive genius, but that does not mean he can't be a good head coach or isn't a good head coach. I agree with you. I think he showed a lot of growth last year. I have no problem saying that when they were 3-5, I was like, get this guy out of here. Like, they're not going to make the playoffs. Screw this guy. I'm done. Like, you're 5 seasons in. I'm over with it. But what he showed me from that point on was so impressive. And there are things to be desired. Personalities are personalities. He's not always going to be perfect. There are things that I'm going to nitpick and psychologically break down. I'm really into leadership. And so I look for little things and little details in how a leader leads his people. That being said, I think as a head coach, how he's developed his team, how he has developed his coaches, he deserves a lot of credit for those things. It's not just offensive play calling. He's not the offensive coordinator alone.
Yeah, I agree. And then real quick, I'm going to throw this one up. I know you got to go. I'm going to put one more question up. We already kind of hit on it, but let's just do this as like kind of a speed thing. I think we can both answer this pretty quick. Moonman says, Jack and Jessie, do you guys think this defense is better than 2019?
Yes.
Yes. Defensive line, just as good. Linebackers, just as good. Secondary, much improved. So the answer is
way
yes.
Better. Way better. And I think D'Amico Ryans is a better coach than Saleh. So.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but he's definitely got the personnel to help him out with that. And he has the background as a former player and everything else like that. So, Jessie, thanks for the show. What do you got coming up on your channel?
Yeah, I'm going to be going on with Sunil here in about 5 minutes over at Last Second Sports. So tap in over there, continuing the 49er talk. And yeah, man, this is a crazy week. This short week it's interesting because last week, Jack, I don't know if you ran into this problem, but last week was extra long. So normally I don't do a show from like Thursday through Saturday, right? Then they have game day and whatever. Well, there was no game on Sunday. So I'm like, let me do an impromptu show on Sunday, which boils into this week. And because it's so short and you're trying to cram everything in, it's like all of a sudden you're doing shows back to back to back 5 days in a row. And it's like, man, this is a grind. So yeah, we got a lot going on. I know you do too, because this short week / long week last week makes it to where you got to just fit in extra shows.
Yeah, no, I this is my third show today. I did my shoe show at 3:00. Did my film breakdown. Had 5 minutes to get my water on with you, and I'm done. Now I don't have another show until Friday, I think, because my usual Thursday guest keeps wanting to go on Tuesday, but I haven't been able to figure that out yet. But no, I'll be back around. I'll be doing some more stuff. So I got a super chat here. I'm going to hit this one. I know you've got to go. Well, I'll hit it up. Thank you very much, Jessie. I always appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, brother.
If you guys are following me here and you're not following Jessie, you're screwing up. Get over to Jessie's channel. He's got over 7,000 subscribers already. Get over there. He does some good work. Check him out. He's going to be over there with Sunil here in a few minutes. So thanks a bunch, Jess.
All right, Jack. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Real quick, I'm going to hit the super chat and then I'm going to head out. We've got Mr. Trey, Striptease Trey. Thanks for the super chat. He says, people want to blame Jimmy, but truth is this team lost in 19 and 21. This team is possibly better if he wins with this secondary. That would be funny. I think Jimmy Garoppolo gets overly blamed, but he had a big role in the loss in the NFC Championship game last year with misses to the tight end and then missed opportunities to Brandon Ayuk down the field and those types of things. So you're right. It's a team game. Jimmy Garoppolo had a big hand in it, though, in 21. I don't think it was quite as big in 2019, but it was still there. So does he get overly blamed? Yes. But if it would be hilarious if there's some way, somehow this team wins a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo playing quarterback. Now, it's never been done. There's no quarterback that is not in the Hall of Fame has ever lost in their first trip to the Super Bowl as a starter and then come back and won a Super Bowl. Only Craig Morton has ever made it back. He lost both times, but he's the only non-Hall of Famer that's actually been able to pull that off. So anyway, thank you very much for the super chat there, Trey. Want to say thanks to everybody that tuned in. If you guys can do me a favor, hit that like button before you leave. Go ahead and subscribe. And when you subscribe, hit the little bell notification so you don't miss any of the shows. Last but not least, get yourselves over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. That's the Inside the 49ers blog over there. New articles going up every day. Put an overreaction Tuesday one up for today for you guys to check out. So if you could do that, that'd be fantastic. Again, thanks a lot very much for everything. I'll be back. Don't think it's going to be tomorrow. Maybe on Thursday we'll do a call-in show. So take care, everybody. Talk to you all soon. Have a great rest of your Tuesday night. Take care. Thank you, Andrew.